The rain fell in heavy sheets against the cabin windows as Tom Miller stacked another log in the fireplace. Outside, the wind howled through the tall pines surrounding his small home at the edge of the national forest. He liked nights like this, when the weather kept everyone else away, and the forest became truly his. 2 years had passed since Tom left his stressful job as a research botanist in the city. Now at 43, with graying temples and calloused hands, he found peace in this simple life. His cabin had all he needed: shelves of books, a small lab for his plant experiments, and no demanding bosses or annoying coworkers. Tom poured himself a cup of tea and settled into his worn armchair with a botany journal. Just as he turned the first page, a loud crash from outside made him jump. The sound had come from his tool shed. "Probably just a branch down," he muttered, but grabbed his flashlight anyway. The rain soaked him instantly as he stepped outside. His boots splashed through puddles as he made his way to the shed. The wooden door hung open. Swinging in the wind, Tom raised his flashlight, expecting to find a fallen shelf or tools scattered by an animal. What he saw instead froze him in place. 2 figures huddled in the corner behind his wheelbarrow. They weren't human. Their skin had a strange blue tint that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. Each had 4 arms wrapped around themselves as they shivered. Their faces looked almost human, but with large almond-shaped eyes that reflected his flashlight beam like a cat's. Tom nearly dropped his flashlight. His heart pounded as he took a step back. The taller figure raised one hand in what seemed like a peaceful gesture, then pointed to the smaller one beside it. The smaller creature was clearly injured, a dark liquid seeping from a gash on its leg. "What the hell?" Tom whispered. The taller being made a sound, a series of clicks and soft tones. It pointed again to its companion, then made a motion like drinking. Despite his fear, Tom noticed how thin they both were. Their strange clothes hung loose on their frames. He recognized the universal signs of hunger and exhaustion. "They're starving," he realized, "and they're scared of me." Tom slowly lowered his flashlight. "You need help." The taller creature nodded. A surprisingly human gesture. Common sense told Tom to run back to his cabin, lock the door, and call someone. Though who exactly would believe him about blue aliens in his tool shed, he wasn't sure. But something else, something deeper, made him stay. He'd always been the type to bring home stray animals and nurse injured wildlife. These beings might not be from Earth, but they needed help just the same. "Wait here," Tom said, making a staying motion with his hand. "I'll be back." He hurried to the cabin, filled a thermos with water, grabbed a first aid kit, and some bread and cheese. His hands shook as he worked, still not quite believing what he'd seen. When he returned to the shed, the creatures hadn't moved. They watched him with those large, wary eyes. Tom slowly approached and offered the water first. The taller one reached out with a trembling blue hand and took the thermos. After examining it for a moment, it helped the injured one drink, then took some water itself. The relief on their faces was unmistakable and strangely human. Tom set down the food and first aid kit. "I don't know what you are or where you came from," he said softly, "but you can't stay in this shed tonight." He gestured toward his cabin. The taller being followed his gaze, then looked back at Tom with an expression he could only describe as hope. "Come on," Tom said, offering his hand. "Let's get you both inside." As he helped the injured one to its feet, Tom wondered what exactly he was getting himself into. But in that moment, they weren't aliens. They were just 2 beings who needed help. And that was something Tom understood perfectly. Tom helped the 2 blue-skinned beings into his cabin, one limping heavily as they crossed the muddy yard through the rain. Once inside, the warm air seemed to make them relax slightly. The firelight danced across their shimmering skin, highlighting strange patterns Tom hadn't noticed before. "Sit here," Tom said, pointing to his couch. The taller one helped the injured one settle down. Up close, Tom could see they had slender feminine features. Their 4 arms were thin but muscular, and their ears curved to delicate points. They wore matching silver jumpsuits, now torn and dirty. The taller one reached into a pocket and pulled out a small device. She pressed several buttons, but it only made a sad chirping noise. She looked at Tom and made a series of musical sounds. "I don't understand," Tom admitted, shaking his head. The alien tried again with the device, then set it down with what seemed like frustration. She pointed to herself and said something that sounded like Mira. Then she pointed to her injured companion and said what sounded like Lena. Names, Tom realized. He pointed to himself. Tom. Tomb, the taller one. Mira, repeated. Tom smiled despite himself. Close enough. He moved toward Lena's injured leg, motioning for permission to look at it. The cut was about 6 inches long, oozing a dark purple liquid that must be their version of blood. Tom opened his first aid kit and pulled out antiseptic and bandages. "I don't know if this will help your kind," he said, "but infection is probably bad for everyone." Mira watched closely as Tom cleaned Lena's wound. Lena winced but didn't pull away. The antiseptic seemed to work the same on their skin as it would on human skin. Tom carefully bandaged the leg, relieved that at least basic medicine appeared compatible. "Hungry?" Tom asked, pantomiming eating. Both aliens nodded eagerly. Tom went to his kitchen and returned with bread, cheese, apples, and a pot of vegetable soup he'd made yesterday. He watched carefully as they examined each item. Mira touched the bread first, breaking off a small piece. She sniffed it, then took a tiny bite. Her eyes widened, and she quickly took another bite. She said something to Lena, who then tried the bread too. Soon, they were both eating everything Tom offered, though they seemed particularly excited about the apples. As they ate, Tom noticed a small symbol embroidered on their jumpsuits, identical swirling patterns that looked like stars. Family markings, perhaps. Sisters. They certainly looked similar enough. After eating, both aliens looked much better. Mira picked up the broken device again and opened a panel on its side. She pointed to several burnt components inside and made a helpless gesture. "Broken?" Tom asked. "You need to fix it." Mira nodded, then made a series of gestures that seemed to indicate sleeping and then working on the device. "You can stay here," Tom said, pointing to the floor of his living room. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow we can figure things out." He gathered blankets and pillows to make pallets on the floor near the fire. The aliens watched him work, their large eyes reflecting the flames. When he finished, he pointed to the makeshift beds. "Sleep," he said, miming the action. Mira said something to Lena, who nodded. Then Mira turned to Tom and placed all 4 of her hands together in front of her chest, bowing slightly. The gesture needed no translation. It was thanks. Tom smiled and nodded back. "You're welcome." As he headed to his own bedroom, Tom paused at the doorway and looked back. The 2 aliens were examining their beds, touching the blankets with obvious curiosity. It struck him then, the strangeness of this moment. Yesterday, he'd been alone in his cabin, convinced that solitude was what he wanted. Now he was hosting visitors from another world. Whatever happened next, Tom knew his life would never be the same. Tom woke early the next morning, half convinced he had dreamed the whole thing. But when he walked into his living room, the 2 blue-skinned aliens were still there. Mira sat cross-legged on the floor, working on the small device with tools she had pulled from hidden pockets in her jumpsuit. Lena was asleep, her bandaged leg propped up on a pillow. Mira looked up as Tom entered and made a soft chirping sound that somehow sounded like a greeting. "Good morning," Tom replied. "How's your sister?" He gestured between them, trying to ask if they were related. Mira seemed to understand. She nodded and pointed to Lena, then to herself, then held up 2 fingers close together. "Sisters." "I thought so," Tom said. He mimicked Mira's gesture, then pointed to himself and spread his arms wide. "No siblings, just me." For the next 3 days, they settled into a strange routine. Tom prepared food, checked Lena's wound, which was healing remarkably fast, and tried to learn their language while Mira worked on fixing their device. Each day, they understood each other a little better through hand gestures and drawings. Tom showed them his plant collection and botany books. The aliens seemed fascinated, especially by the orchids in his small greenhouse. Mira would spend hours studying them, making notes with strange symbols on a thin, flexible material she carried. On the fourth morning, Tom was making breakfast when he heard an excited sound from the living room. He hurried in to find Mira holding up the device, now glowing with a soft blue light. "Fix," she said in heavily accented English. "Fix good." Tom stared in amazement. "You can speak my language now." Mira pressed the device against her throat. "This translator. Learning still. Not perfect words." "That's incredible," Tom said, sitting down across from her. "Now we can really talk." Over breakfast, Mira explained their situation through broken sentences and hand gestures to fill the gaps. They came from a star system Tom had never heard of, called something that sounded like Ardalon. They had been scientists before a war broke out. "Bad people take power," Mira said, her large eyes sad. "Say knowledge dangerous. Kill many like us." "You're refugees," Tom realized. "You were running away." Lena, who was finally strong enough to join them at the table, nodded. "Ship damage. Emergency land here. Our kind. Not known to Earth people," Mira added. "Dangerous for us if found." Tom understood their fear. He'd seen enough science fiction movies to know how humans typically reacted to aliens. "Don't worry. I won't tell anyone you're here." As the translator improved over the next few days, Tom learned more about them. Their species valued knowledge and scientific advancement above all else. The sisters had been botanical geneticists on their world, creating plants that could survive harsh conditions. "Like me," Tom said, surprised by the coincidence. "Show us more plants." Lena asked. Her leg was nearly healed now, allowing her to walk around the cabin. Tom took them to his greenhouse and showed them his experiments. Drought-resistant vegetables and flowers that could bloom in winter. The sisters exchanged excited glances. "You do much with little," Mira said, examining his simple equipment. "Impressive." "Just basic science," Tom replied modestly. "No." Lena touched one of his hybrid tomato plants. "You have good heart for plants. Feel what they need." That evening, as they sat by the fire, Mira asked the question Tom had been avoiding. "Why help us, Tom? Strangers, not even your kind." Tom thought about it for a moment. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "That's enough reason." The sisters looked at each other, their expressions unreadable. Then Mira turned back to Tom. "On our world, nothing free. Always trade. Always price." She tilted her head. "You want nothing from us. Just for you to get better," Tom said. "That's all." Lena's large eyes shimmered in the firelight. "This concept new to us." Tom didn't realize it then, but his simple act of kindness had shaken their understanding of the universe more than any scientific discovery ever could. One week after finding the alien sisters, Tom woke to strange sounds coming from his greenhouse. The sun had barely risen, painting the sky pink through the trees. He pulled on a jacket and stepped outside. Inside the greenhouse, Mira and Lena stood over his workbench. They had dismantled parts of their damaged translator and combined them with pieces of his gardening equipment. 4 hands each moved with incredible speed, connecting wires and adjusting small components Tom didn't recognize. "What are you doing?" he asked, concerned for his equipment. The sisters turned, not startled but clearly not expecting him so early. "Tom," Mira said, her translator now working almost perfectly. "We wanted to finish before you woke." "A surprise." "A surprise." Tom approached cautiously. "What kind of surprise involves taking apart my tools?" Lena stepped aside, revealing a small device now attached to one of his tomato plants. It pulsed with a soft green light that seemed to flow into the plant. "Watch," she said simply. Before Tom's eyes, the tomato plant began to change. New stems grew, leaves unfurled, and small green tomatoes swelled, turning red in minutes rather than weeks. In less than 5 minutes, the plant had produced what would normally take an entire season. Tom stared in disbelief. "That's impossible." "Not impossible," Mira corrected. "Just beyond your current science." She picked one of the tomatoes and handed it to Tom. "Completely safe. Try." Tom hesitantly bit into the tomato. It was perfect, juicy, flavorful, and somehow better than any he had grown before. "This technology," Lena explained, "combines energy transfer with genetic acceleration. We use it for emergency food production during space travel." "But this is revolutionary," Tom said, his mind racing. "This could end world hunger. It could transform agriculture everywhere." The sisters nodded. "Yes," Mira agreed, "and it is only a small example of what we know." Tom sat heavily on his work stool. "You've been holding back all this time." "We needed to understand you first," Lena said. "On our world, knowledge is currency, the most valuable thing. People kill for such secrets." Mira adjusted something on the device. "We had to know. If we showed you our true capabilities, what would you do?" Tom felt a mix of emotions, wonder at the technology, but also a sting of betrayal that they hadn't trusted him sooner. "I took you in. I helped you. Wasn't that enough?" "That is precisely what confused us," Mira replied. Her four hands gestured as she spoke. "You helped without knowing our value, without demanding payment. This concept does not exist where we come from." "Kindness?" Tom asked. "Compassion?" "These words," Lena said softly. "Our translator has no exact match for them." Tom looked at the transformed tomato plant, then back at the sisters. "So what now? You've decided I'm trustworthy." Mira and Lena exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. "More than trustworthy," Mira finally said. "You are different, special." Lena stepped forward. "Our ship crashed because we were fleeing those who would use our knowledge to destroy rather than create. We thought all beings were the same, seeking power, advantage, domination. You proved us wrong," Mira added. "One simple human, living alone in the woods, changed how we see the universe." Tom felt uncomfortable under their intense gaze. "I just did what anyone would do." Both sisters made a sound that Tom now recognized as their version of laughter. "No," Lena said. "Not anyone. We have visited 17 worlds before yours. Never have we received help without price." Mira gestured to the greenhouse around them. "This small technology is nothing. We wish to give you more, much more." "Why?" Tom asked. "Why me?" "Because," Mira said, her large eyes glowing with an inner light, "you helped 2 starving aliens without knowing what they could offer in return. If more humans are like you, perhaps your species deserves our knowledge after all." Tom looked at the ripening plants around him and realized his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The next morning, Tom found the sisters gathering materials from around his property. Bits of metal, wires from old electronics, and samples from various plants in his greenhouse. They worked with purpose, their 4 hands moving in perfect coordination. "We need to visit our ship," Mira announced while carefully placing leaves from Tom's rarest orchid into a small container. "Essential components there." "Your ship." Tom nearly spilled his coffee. "It's still intact." "Where is it?" Lena pointed south, 3 miles that direction. "Hidden in ravine. Camouflage system still works." Tom grabbed his hiking boots. "I'll take you there." The forest was wet from recent rain, making the hike slower than usual. Tom led the way, occasionally helping the sisters over fallen logs or steep sections. Despite their advanced technology, they seemed less adapted to wilderness travel than he was. "How did you find my cabin?" Tom asked as they walked. Seems like a strange coincidence. Not coincidence, Mira explained. Ship scanners detected plant diversity around your home. Unusual concentrations of botanical specimens. We thought, scientist lives there. Maybe help us. Tom smiled. So my plant collection saved your lives. After an hour of hiking, they reached a steep ravine. Tom saw nothing unusual until Mira pressed something on her wrist. Suddenly, the air shimmered, revealing a sleek vessel about the size of a small bus. Its silver surface bore scorch marks along one side. Impressive cloaking technology, Tom whispered. Inside, the ship was cramped but orderly. The sisters moved quickly, gathering materials from various compartments. Tom stared at the control panels and strange devices, feeling like he'd stepped into another world, which, in a way, he had. This is what we need, Lena said, holding up a crystal-like object that pulsed with inner light. Living core, heart of our greatest technology. Back at the cabin, the sisters worked through the night. Tom tried to help, but most of their work was beyond his understanding. He provided tools, held things when asked, and watched in amazement as they created something entirely new. By dawn, they had assembled a device unlike anything Tom had ever seen. It was about the size of a microwave, with the crystal at its center. Plants from Tom's greenhouse had been integrated into its structure, their roots and stems woven through transparent panels. It's ready, Mira announced, her voice solemn. Tom approached cautiously. What exactly is it? We call it the Genesis seed, Lena explained. It combines our world's technology with Earth's unique botanical properties. Your plants have surprising qualities we've never encountered before. Mira placed her hands on the device. This will accelerate plant growth 1,000 times beyond what you saw yesterday. But more importantly, it can heal living tissue, plant, animal, human, at the cellular level. You mean it can cure diseases? Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Many diseases, yes, Lena confirmed. Cancer, organ failure, genetic disorders. The technology reads DNA and restores it to optimal condition. Tom stepped back, overwhelmed. This would change everything. Human medicine, world hunger, environmental restoration. Yes, Mira said simply. That is the gift we wish to give you. Why? Tom asked, though he already suspected the answer. The sisters exchanged glances before Lena spoke. In our culture, knowledge is never shared freely. It is traded, sold, sometimes stolen. The concept of giving without expecting return, what you call kindness, is foreign to us. You showed us a different way, Mira continued. You helped us when we could offer nothing in return. You shared your home, your food, your knowledge of earth plants without demanding anything. This changed how we see the universe, Lena added softly. Perhaps our people were wrong. Perhaps there is value in giving freely. Tom stared at the device. Its potential was almost beyond comprehension. In the right hands, it could save millions of lives, end suffering, transform Earth. In the wrong hands. This is too much, he said finally. I can't possibly accept something this valuable. Mira placed one of her 4 hands on Tom's shoulder. That is exactly why you must have it. Because you understand its true worth is not in power or profit, but in how it can help others. This is our way of saying thank you, Lena added, for teaching us something our advanced civilization never learned. Tom looked at the Genesis seed and realized his simple act of helping 2 strangers had somehow earned humanity its greatest gift and its greatest responsibility. Tom sat at his kitchen table late that night, staring at the Genesis seed as it hummed softly. The blue-green light from its core cast strange shadows across the room. The sisters had gone to sleep, exhausted after creating their gift. But Tom couldn't rest. His mind raced with both possibilities and dangers. In the wrong hands, this technology could be weaponized. Governments would fight to control it. Corporations would lock it away behind patents. Even if used properly, it would disrupt entire industries overnight. His phone rang, startling him. The display showed his old friend Dr. Martinez from the university. Tom hesitated before answering. "Hello, Tom. Thank God you picked up," Martinez said, his voice tense. "There's a situation. The observatory detected something entering Earth's atmosphere near your area last week. Now there are unusual energy readings coming from somewhere close to your cabin." Tom's heart raced. What kind of energy readings? Like nothing we've seen before. The military is involved now. They're sending people to investigate tomorrow morning. After hanging up, Tom paced the floor. They were coming. People with guns and questions. People who would take the sisters and study them. Who would seize the Genesis seed and lock it away. He woke Mira and Lena and explained the situation. Their blue skin paled to a lighter shade. "They will capture us," Lena said quietly. "Study us. Take our technology." "Not if you leave tonight," Tom replied. "Is your ship functional enough to take off?" Mira nodded. "Emergency systems are operational. We can reach orbit. Activate our long-range beacon. Our people would find us." "Then you need to go now," Tom said firmly. "Take the Genesis seed with you." The sisters looked at each other in surprise. Lena stepped forward. "The gift was for you, Tom. For humans." "And I'm grateful," Tom said. "But I can't protect it or you. Not from my entire government." Mira tilted her head. "There is another option. Come with us." Tom stopped pacing. "What?" "Our ship has room for 3, Mira explained. "You could join us, see the stars, visit our homeworld. Your botanical knowledge is impressive even by our standards." "Leave Earth," Tom whispered, the possibility taking his breath away. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine it, traveling through space, seeing other worlds, learning about plants that had never grown on Earth. No more loneliness, no more feeling out of place among his own kind. But then he thought about what would happen to the Genesis seed if he left with it. Humanity would lose something miraculous before they even knew it existed. "I can't," he said finally. "If I disappear along with these energy readings, they'll know something happened. They'll never stop looking. And the Genesis seed belongs here, on Earth, where it can help people." "Then what do we do?" Lena asked. Tom thought for a moment, then walked to his desk. He pulled out his old laptop and a portable hard drive. "We copy everything," he said. "All the schematics, the formulas, the instructions. You've taught me enough that I can understand the basics now." Through the night, the sisters recorded every detail of the Genesis seed's construction. Tom asked countless questions, taking notes and making diagrams. By dawn, he had everything needed to recreate their gift. "It's time for you to go," Tom said, looking out the window at the first light of morning. "Military helicopters will be here soon." The sisters gathered their few belongings. Lena picked up the Genesis seed. "No," Tom said. "Leave it. Take this instead." He handed them the portable drive. "Your knowledge preserved, in case something happens to you on your journey home." "And what will you do?" Mira asked. Tom smiled sadly. "Make sure your gift reaches the right people." As they walked toward the door, Lena turned back. "You are giving up your chance to see the stars. Some sacrifices are worth making," Tom replied. "You taught me the value of giving freely. Now it's my turn to give something important." The sisters' eyes shimmered with emotion as they realized Tom was staying behind to face whatever came, alone. 5 years passed since that fateful dawn when Tom watched the sisters' ship rise silently into the morning sky, vanishing moments before military helicopters appeared over the horizon. When questioned, Tom had shown the soldiers his greenhouse and botanical experiments, explaining the energy readings as failed attempts at new growing techniques. They'd been suspicious but found nothing alien to confirm their concerns. The Genesis seed remained hidden beneath a false floor in Tom's root cellar. In those 5 years, Tom had worked carefully, methodically. He created simplified versions of the seed's technology, each one appearing to be his own invention, each one released anonymously, to different research institutions around the world. Universities in Japan, Brazil, Kenya, and Norway had all received partial blueprints, each solving one piece of the puzzle without knowing the complete picture. Today, as Tom sat on his porch watching the sunset, news played on his tablet. A researcher in Mumbai had successfully combined the various technologies, creating what they called cellular regeneration therapy. The reporter spoke excitedly about the first human trials curing previously terminal patients. "Just as you intended," Tom said softly to the absent sisters. He sipped his tea, satisfied that he had kept his promise. The knowledge was spreading, helping people, and no single government or corporation controlled it. The first unusual light appeared just after dark. At first Tom thought it was a shooting star, but it slowed and hovered above the clearing near his cabin. Then another appeared, and another. 3 ships, each slightly larger than the one that had carried the sisters away. Tom stood, his heart racing. Had they returned? Or was this something else? The center ship descended silently, touching down in the clearing. Its door opened, spilling soft blue light onto the grass. 2 figures emerged, unmistakably Mira and Lena. Though they looked healthier, their blue skin practically glowing with vitality. Behind them came 3 other aliens of different species Tom had never seen before. "Tom," Mira called, her voice carrying across the clearing. "We have returned." He walked toward them, hardly believing his eyes. 5 years, he said. "I wasn't sure I'd ever see you again." "We have watched," Lena explained. "Monitored how you distributed our gift. Very clever, pieces of knowledge scattered worldwide." One of the strangers stepped forward. Tall with golden skin and 6 fingers on each hand, he spoke in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Dren of the Galactic Alliance. Your actions have been of great interest to us." Tom's mouth went dry. "Galactic Alliance. 27 sentient species working together," Mira explained. "They have been watching Earth for centuries, waiting." "Waiting for what?" Tom asked. "For proof," said Dren. "Proof the humans are ready to join us, that you would use advanced knowledge wisely, not for weapons or control." Lena smiled. "Our crash was accidental, but what followed became the perfect test." "A test?" Tom's voice faltered. "You mean everything was?" "Not planned," Mira quickly corrected, "but observed. The Alliance has strict rules about intervention. When we reported what happened, how one human helped us, and then carefully shared our technology to benefit all people equally, it changed everything." Dren nodded solemnly. "Most species, upon receiving such advanced technology, immediately weaponize it or use it for dominance. You chose a different path." "I just did what seemed right," Tom said simply. "That," Dren replied, "is precisely why we are here." From the second ship emerged humans in formal attire. Government officials Tom recognized from news reports. They looked nervous but excited. "First contact has already been initiated with your world leaders," Lena explained. "The Alliance wishes to formally welcome Earth as a probationary member." "And they wanted you present," Mira added. "The human who proved compassion could exist alongside intelligence." As the officials approached, Tom felt overwhelmed. His simple act of kindness toward 2 starving aliens had literally changed the course of human history. "Remember what you taught us, Tom," Lena said quietly. "That helping others without expecting reward is its own kind of strength." Mira took his hand in her blue one. "Your small cabin became the bridge between worlds." As Tom stepped forward to join the historic meeting, he realized some bridges are built not with grand plans or powerful technology, but with simple acts of kindness that echo across the stars.